Finding life a bit complex? Confusing? Aware that your old strategies aren't working? Why not ask Pam and Marilyn? This is the Irreverent Therapists, and we're here to add some clarity, humor, and a bit of what might be considered blasphemy to your day.
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and this is and I can't talk. The Irreverent Therapist. And joining me is Pam Hodling. Hi, Pam.
Hello, Marilyn, and hello, everybody.
Yes. So today we're doing Is Your History Making You Hysterical? Are you creating your current life based on past experiences? Have you noticed that it often resembles a soap opera? Perhaps you add a bit of trauma drama, a pinch of depression, a dab of self-righteousness, some blame or guilt associated with your family, and voila, you have your ongoing daytime drama. Is that working for you? What if you could create your life with no reference to the past? What if you could choose to create a life today that is beyond what you've decided is possible? So that's what we're doing today. Is your past history making you hysterical?
You know, it's so funny. I used to watch soap operas when I was a teenager as a young adult. I did. I
never got
loved
into that.
operas.
Interesting. What did you love about them?
Well, I really don't know what I loved about them, but what I remember thinking was, it's like, no matter what, it never works out. Like, you know, they might have this like many month thing where they're these people and they're trying to overcome something and they finally do, but you can bet that, like, you know, within another 6 months, they've broken up and their life is terrible because there has to always be something wrong, or what's the point with a soap opera?
Funny. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that I really wanted to bring out in this discussion is how we're taught that our experiences are really relevant, and, you know, your past creates your future and all those kinds of things. Because I think that's one of the most damaging myths. I can't call it a piece of information because I don't think it is a piece of information, but I think it's one of the most damaging, whatever you want to call it, concepts or ideas that we're taught. Because it basically dooms people to never being able to create anything beyond what their past is.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, actually it's funny because I was talking about the soap operas and how something has to always be wrong. And that's what we do when you're, you know, how do I want to put this? It's like you go looking for something to be wrong because there's always been something wrong. And so you keep creating
that there's something wrong.
I actually know someone who I was talking to one time, and he was like, you know, it's like, I know everything's fine, but it's like I have to go looking for something to be a problem. And it's like, you know, I don't know. I feel like we're on like two threads that actually interweave a lot.
Yes.
Because it's, and in my head, at least they do. It all makes sense to me.
It all makes sense to Pam.
Yeah. But it's like, I mean, I know when we first came up with this topic, it was, you know, like, okay, so say I was abused when I was a kid and I keep referencing back to it and I keep, you know, I'm planning my whole life around that. Like, that's a real obvious way that people create their future based on their past. But then there's also like more subtle things where if I've decided that, you know, money is bad and dirty and only, you know, and rich people are, you know, out to get others and walk all over people. Say I had that point of view. I'm constantly, everything I've created in the past was based on that, but everything in the future is going to be based on that as well.
Well, yeah. And I was looking at how when I was a kid, we had a kind of a big lot, and we grew gourds. I mean, people don't seem to grow gourds these days, but they're what do I want to say? They're for decoration. They're decorative.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting out on the corner and trying to sell these gourds, and it was a miserable failure. And I took that with me when I first started trying to create Right Recovery, and still it will pop up at times. It's like, nobody wants what I have to sell.
Wow.
You know, and it's like everything that is destroyed on creative times a gazillion, right, wrong, and bad, but only enjoy it was.
And then what I'm thinking of is like, who are your neighbors that they wouldn't go out there and buy a gourd from?
I know. Well, we had really weird neighbors, I have to say.
Well,
we had one of them, they were strange.
Yeah, because when I was a young adult, I went for a walk and there was a kids with a stand and they were selling painted rocks.
Uh-huh.
And they had painted all kinds of rocks, all kinds of ways.
I like it.
And I was like, you know what? I don't have any money with me, but I will come back and buy some painted rocks. And I did. I came back with money.
Cool. Yeah. We don't think that things really influence kids the way they do, but they do. They really do, because nobody's telling the kids, wait a minute, let's look at this. Maybe this wasn't anything about you. Maybe it was something else, you know.
Yeah. Well, because you took it as, you know, what I have nobody wants.
Yes.
You know, when it might have been, well, you know, your neighbors are really busy or they don't get kids or, I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I've looked at that and worked through those kinds of things. But I thought it was a pretty good example of how we use our past almost unconsciously. We'll have an attitude, a point of view that we take into whatever we're doing. Yeah. I mean, how much does that influence relationships? We're both therapists. I mean, OMG. How much do we have clients who, you know, I don't understand why I keep picking men who cheat on me? And I was having lunch with another therapist the other day, and he was telling me about this client. It's like, this is the fourth husband that's cheated on her. Let's see. Her dad cheated on her mom. So you just think like, well, maybe, you know, she picked that up, that all men are cheaters. And that's, you know, that's one of the awesome access tools that has really changed my life, which is that your point of view creates your reality. She had a point of view that all men were going to cheat on all women. And that's exactly what she created over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, you know what, because when you mentioned we're both therapists and we see all the time how people create their relationships based on their past relationships and everything, you know, when it comes to traditional therapy, it's all about you have to understand where you're functioning from and why you're making the choices you do. So, you know, this lady you're talking about, you know, you'd be trying to help her see what in her childhood or what in her life experience leads her to create the same kind of relationship again and again and again.
Yes.
And what's so awesome is there's ways to change this without having to dredge up the past and having to understand the past. If you're willing to be aware that all your points of view that you've created from the past, you know, impact what you create for the future, you can just start working with changing those points of view or clearing them or just saying, I'm going to choose different now. And you can. It's really remarkable.
Yes. And I think that's almost a step ahead of a lot of people in some ways.
Oh, no, I am. I'm like tossing out this possibility and then we'll work our way towards it.
And then we'll work our way towards it. Because I think what I've seen with people is that it's not just, oh, this was my experience, so that's what life is like. There is a lot of that. But it's also, oh, this is who I am. So many people take their past experiences as some kind of reflection of their identities. Oh, I'm not a good salesperson. I think that's what I decided after that event. So it wasn't just people don't want what I have. It's like, I'm not a good salesperson. I'm not good at marketing, you know. So, well, everything that is.
Yeah, because it's like rather than, oh, I could do any of it. And yeah. Well, so Marilyn, on this topic, my head's going like 25 different places at once.
I like it. You have that kind of head.
There's so much that we can go into about this. How about what's like the primary thing that you would like to have us look at with it? I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot after saying you had all of these things going on in your head. I'm like, what's going on in my head? Flatline. No. It's not flatline, actually. So what would I like people to know? That, well, it's so simple, but truthfully, that your past does not have to have any relevance to your present or your future.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. I mean, I think if actually people can get that, the fact that you were abused as a child does not have to mean, let's say physically or sexually abused, that you can't have an amazing sex life.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
All righty.
Basically, I totally get what you're talking about. Like you said, I think people listening might be like, huh? How could it possibly not? So like what comes up for me is how, we basically, up until I got introduced to access tools, everything that I thought I was had to do with my past. Everything I'd overcome. Like, I was a social worker because of all those things I'd overcome and how much I wanted to help other people overcome their stuff. And so it's like to say, oh, you're not actually tied to that. I think we need to go into that quite a bit more.
Okay. And we're coming up near a break. So we will get to that when we come back from the break. And what I'd like to say before that is, what if you actually have choice? Yeah. And I think that's what comes down to. Choice in what's going on and choice in how you interpret events. And we will be back very shortly.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Have you been searching for a perspective beyond the mainstream? Check it out. Join your hosts Cielito Pascual and Diana Gold Holland on Share International Radio for thought-provoking views behind the news. Sundays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio. You can also find us at shareontheairradio.org. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
If you remember living fearlessly, joyfully, and in a world filled with adventure, happiness, pleasure, and unbridled living, then this show is for you. Join me, Dame Nicole Brandon, as I bring you the world's top experts in wealth, creativity, flow, sea-edging technology, space, wellness, health, love, lust, and passion, all merging together each week here at the Hub of Happiness. Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Passionate Living, where you can ride on the magic carpet ride of living and learn how to lead a passionately wild, exciting, and outrageously amazing life.
the best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm Marilyn Bradford, joined with Pam Holdley, and we are the Irreverent Therapists. And we're talking today about how your past does not have to create your present or your future. And right before we went to break, one of the things that I was talking about was choice, and choice in interpreting events. And I think this is just huge, because we're taught that we should have certain emotional responses to certain events. I'll never forget as a therapist when someone came in, one of my clients came in, and I didn't know them that well. I will give myself that credit. But they said, well, my father died this week. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, I'm not. He was a horrible man. I was like, oh.
I'm sure she said something a bit stronger than that.
She did. But that changed so much for me, because I realized how much I was automatically responding to events as if death was bad. And we do that with all kinds of things. I mean, I know a lot of people who've actually been abused as children, and one of the things that's created the most space for them and the most possibility of choosing different is not making it that significant.
Yeah.
Yes, it may have been a hard experience, and it doesn't have to dictate anything in your life. Yeah. You know, and I've also worked with, because I've been a therapist since, the very early 90s. People who are like, I'll never get over this. I don't think I'll ever be able to be intimate with anyone. And it's got this quality of addiction, which is that you're making yourself the effect of something, and you're basically becoming a victim.
Well, and that, I think that's the key, because what I can recall is, feeling that, what you said, feeling like you're the effect of things and the people around you. And when you're kind of at the mercy of whatever the winds blow, it's like then you are a victim.
Yeah.
But I think it's such a radical idea, Marilyn, for some people, that they have choice in everything.
Yes.
And that, even though I was abused, or even though, my family member or somebody close to me died, or even though I lost my job, or, whatever it is, that there's this like fundamental difference between this happened to me and I create every moment what I'd like to create, and I can choose to change it.
You just opened up that proverbial big can of worms, Pam, with that statement.
Yes, I'm sure I did.
I create every moment.
More. Tell me what.
Would you like to say more about that one?
Well, because having been on both sides of this, I grew up, the way I used to describe it was I felt like I was a leaf in a stream, and like I had no, if it was going through rapids, I was going through rapids. And if it was, a nice wide place where it's this calm smoothness, then and if I got like stuck over on a little eddy in the corner, there's nothing I could do. And that's how I saw myself in life. I felt like, whoever I was, I either lucked out or I didn't luck out,
Wow. Yeah.
That I had no influence over anything or anyone around me. Which I know you might be sitting there going, Pam, I cannot imagine you that way, because now I'm this like powerhouse, control, ultra control freak. Totally creating what I want to create. But it was a really quite a journey for me to go from that to first just I have the ability to change things in my life.
Yes.
I can say what works for me. I can choose, to do what I want to do, not just be what everybody else wants me to be. But so I actually had come a long way on that. Then when I got introduced to access tools, it was just like, none of this is real anyway. Meaning none of the limitation, none of the being the effect of things is actually real unless I make it so. And I get that this is like a real fundamental kind of shift.
This is huge for people. Huge.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to break it down into, if you're sitting there feeling like you can't change anything to suddenly you can, except for the tools that Marilyn and I talk about all the time, because it's really, if you start using those, that's where you start to know you're creating everything that's going on in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what would rock a lot of people's worlds is the idea that you actually contributed to creating the abuse.
Yeah.
I think we actually have to address that.
Yeah. Well, I know for me and for a lot of people that I've worked with, it's, I know people who, they put themselves in the way of the abuser to protect their siblings.
Yes, absolutely.
Or protect their parent, or, it's because they knew they could handle it and they knew they could change things. And it's a very radical idea when you have this idea of someone's a victim to then go to, what actually is What's great about this I'm not getting?
Right.
I mean, for me, a major turning point was when I realized I am who I am from all these things that I've been through, and it allows me to be quite an effective healer in whatever, whether it's in the therapy guys or the access consciousness, whatever modality. I've done so many things over the years. And it was like, there's nothing to forgive. It's just what I created.
Right. Yeah. And I just feel the energy around this. People are like, what are you talking about? So I'm going to change the topic just slightly. And maybe we'll come back to the idea that you create everything in your life.
We are the Irreverent Therapists.
We are the Irreverent Therapists. That's absolutely true. But, let me say one thing about the whole you create everything in your life. The cool thing is, if you create it, you can uncreate it. Yeah. Because the whole idea of being a victim makes you truly powerless. I think that's where the whole idea of powerlessness comes in. You're a victim of alcohol. You're a victim of abuse. And is that how you really want to run your life? I mean, come on, guys. There's more to you than that. You can overcome anything. And a lot of it is just changing your attitude about whatever's going on.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think so often, I think it's easy when people hear, you create your reality, you create, what's going on in your life. It's easy to flip that into blame the person.
Yes.
So it's all my fault. My life's such a piece of shit. Thank you so much. That really,
right. That's really helpful.
And, but it's what you said of if you're willing to look at it as whatever this is, I created it, then I can choose to create it different. A friend of ours does a lot of facilitation around money and things. And I remember one time he said, he was like, okay, say you created $100,000 of credit card debt. And then you're sitting around going, I can't do anything. I'm not good at creating. It's like, no, you created amazingly. You created $100,000 in credit card debt. If you're willing to acknowledge that you created that, it didn't just happen to you. You have the capacity to create. You just want to choose something different to create. Right. And then, and with that tool, then you can start to create not having the debt and then actually having the money. But it's the same way. It's like, so to me, when I say, I've created everything in my life exactly the way it is right now, it's in no way about, it's all my fault. Partly because I don't have any judgment of it's a right, I've done, if you're not judging what's going on, then there's no, that I think maybe Marilyn, that's a key piece. When you're not judging it,
yes, the whole
then
judging
knowing
thing.
You created it is empowering.
Yes, that's huge. People get this. What creates this as empowering is the willingness to not judge what you've created. Wow, interesting pile of poo I've created. Okay, I think I'll create something different over here.
Oh, so strong.
No, but I think that's really crucial, and it goes hand in hand with the whole judgment thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you were saying it's such a reach for people to have that idea, that's because so often we're coming from that place of judgment, of judging ourselves and judging what we've created and judging the people around us. And, but if the judgment's not there, because if I have no judgment of having been abused, it's just like, wow, that was really interesting. Then one, it doesn't impact me the rest of my life.
Exactly.
I don't create my future from that, that was so wrong. And it gives me the ability to just choose what would I like to create now.
One of the things that I found with clients is I'll often ask them, is there a difference for you between an ice cream truck, the brake failed on the ice cream truck and it ran over you, accidentally, you were a kid, or someone consciously or was aware of your presence and didn't care and ran over you? And most people say, yes, it really makes a difference that they didn't care about me. And that's what I think sticks people so much with abuse, is the idea that this person didn't care about them, wasn't taking care of them. And they make it personal. And here's another kind of a big whammy that most people would probably find strange, is nothing that gets created is personal. Your abuse was not personal.
Yeah.
They would have abused any little girl, any little boy in that same situation. And when you can really get that none of it's personal, I think it can actually help to move beyond it.
Yeah.
And to not allow it to be such an influence on your life. So we've just dropped a few zingers in here, you created everything
nice
and none of it's personal. And we'll be back to talk more about this in just a couple of minutes.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Dr. Kevin here, and I want to invite you every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, to join me on the Dr. Kevin Show, where we have a diversity of guests who help you step outside the box, behind the curtain, and see what a load of crap is going on in the world today, so you have more information with which to make better decisions. We'll see you there. Namaste.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm Marilyn Bradford. This is the Irreverent Therapist with me and Pam Holdling. And we're talking about, is your history making you hysterical? Which is basically how much validity are you giving to your past as a predictor of your present and future as a sort of, I don't know what to call it, showing you what's possible for you and what's not possible for you. And how much are you really aware that you actually have choice, particularly in interpreting events and choosing what you do with them? Mm-hmm. I used to say that, and I still believe all events are neutral. It's just the meaning that we give to them that creates the chaos in our lives. Yeah.
Well, that makes me think back to the whole soap opera idea that we started out with.
Right.
Because it's, and then what we brought up about no judgment, because it's like, if you're functioning from no judgment, you're not judging you, you're not judging what you're creating, you're not judging what's going on around you. There is no soap opera. Like,
right, exactly. We have to create the soap opera.
Right. It's like, because it's all that stuff you're talking about of the interpretation you put on things and the significance you put on it. Because if it's like, my husband left me, right? If you're putting all that stuff on it, then it's like, oh no, my terrible husband, how could he do this to me? We promised to be together forever, right? Now, does that sound like a good soap opera topic?
That sounds like a great
if it's like, oh, well, my husband chose to do something different and my husband left me, and now what would I like to create? There's absolutely no drama and no baggage with that. It's just what's occurring and what do you choose now?
Yeah, absolutely. And, if your husband left you, he's probably a no good jerk. So be happy.
But it's like the freedom that comes from truly not judging things. And it's not that you're not judging it and, well, I'm just going to be a doormat and not have any point of view about anything and people can walk all over me. It's, Marilyn, you're really good at talking about judgment as no judgment as empowerment. So,
well, let's just take this "my husband left me" idea, because what I've seen in a lot of cases is my husband left me. It's so horrible. I'll never get on with my life. And then, she wants to take him back. And if you're actually at a space of no judgment, you can look at it and go, okay, so what created this? What's my part in this? What's his part? Oh, I've been unwilling to be aware that he's actually a jackass. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's interesting. I created that. What would I like to create now? I have a possibility and opportunity here to actually create. Now, it may be a little bit scary, but I can reach out and get support that I need. I can make this work for me. And what I find is when people are really willing to go into, I said jackass. Maybe that's an awareness, not a judgment. But when people are willing to go into no judgment, then they can actually be in the space of, okay, what's right about this I'm not getting? How do I use this to my advantage? They can be in the space of question. The thing that kills us with judgment is that it creates a space where we can't actually be in question. We have to be in conclusion. Yeah. And if you're in conclusion, if you're doing the victim, if you're being the effect, then when he's tired of the bimbo and he wants to come back, you're apt to say, well, of course, I missed you too. If you're actually in no judgment, this is probably a point of view, but you're going to be like, you know what? I really saw your true colors and I think I'm happier by myself.
Yeah.
And sayonara.
Because we're talking about how to not have your past create your future, right? To not always be referencing that. And it's like, so as we're talking about this, woman whose husband leaves her, from that space of no judgment, she has all possibilities available to her going forward. Yes. She can create whatever she'd like to create as her life now. Yes. From the place of, I can't believe he wronged me. I'm never going to be able to have the life I want to have because I'm not loved or, whatever. Because people have all kinds of different things that come to them around my husband left me. But like whatever that is, you know, if all those things that she has about it being so significant and terrible and her interpretation of it, each one of those is limiting, basically cutting off huge possibilities of choices she could have to create her life as. And it's narrowing it down to, I'm a mess because my husband left me and that's all I can create.
Right. And if you really get the energy of that, you can see that if this person creates their life from that, then 5 years, 10 years from now, that's going to be the defining factor in their life.
Yeah, 10 years from now, she can still be blaming that ex for leaving her and messing up her life.
Messing up her whole life and nothing's working for her and blah, blah, blah. And I think I just wanted to bring up this example because I just think it's so clear and it's not so charged. Now, my mother and my father grew up in the Depression where there really wasn't a lot of money. Now, they were not, I was not around then, poverty stricken. My mother's mother owned her own home, a little house in Beaumont, Texas, and had a garden and had chickens, so there was food. And they actually were able to have jobs. I think my grandfather worked as a milkman. But my mother has carried this poverty mentality with her the whole way. I remember we were having a dinner party and I was really into cooking and I was going to make these spinach timbales, which is, you know, you cook down the spinach and you mix it with cream and cheese and you put it in these fancy little molds and it's, you know, it's very ta-ta. But anyway, I said to my mother, you know, we need a bag of spinach for each person. This is a time when they have plenty of money. Plenty of money.
And spinach doesn't cost that much.
Spinach doesn't cost that much. And she's like, I could never spend that much on vegetables. I was like, wow, okay. But that's been the kind of thing is that her mind, even now, even though she could, I suppose, like throw it away. But buying things, she practically couldn't spend the money she has now.
Yeah. Right. But she has more money than she could possibly spend in the rest of life. She makes more money
than she spends every month, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and if you invested in the 40s and 50s, it pretty much doesn't matter what you invested in, you know, in the stock market, or you bought property and they have rent houses. Everything went up.
Right.
But there's still this mentality. I'm coming to visit in Christmas. And it's like, well, you need a cheaper place to stay. And I'm like, you know, I'm not staying in Motel 6, Mom. It's just between the prostitutes and the druggies, it just doesn't work for me.
Well, I mean, that's such a good example because it does show it's like she's continually creating her present and her future based on the past.
And what I love about it is that you can see it has no relevance.
Has no relevance.
It's like, hello.
Well, you know, I mean, before you started talking about your mom, when we were talking about, you know, situation where husband leaves wife, you know, what I was thinking is that, I mean, that's kind of obvious to people. Like people can see like, oh yeah, you know, you're miserable and you're dwelling on it and you're, you know, letting it affect your whole life. The kind of aha I had was, Marilyn, we do the same thing with the good stuff. It's like, say someone impacted your life in a way that was really helpful to you. We can also carry that if we have judgment about it, if we make it significant, even though it's like positive judgments, we can limit ourselves just as much to the past.
Could you give an example of that?
Yeah. Well, okay. So for example, I was really, really good at math. You wouldn't believe it now.
Oh, I would believe it. You balance everything and have your taxes all on spreadsheets.
Right. Okay. So then compared to what I used to be able to do with with higher mathematics, I don't know that much anymore. But basically, like, you know, some of the professors that I had in college were very influential in my life and in, you know, helping me know how amazing I was at math. And when I wanted to go to graduate school for social work, like I felt like I was betraying the whole mathematics department because I was such a brilliant mathematician and was going to go on to do such great things. And I can remember calling the dean of the, whatever he was, the head of the math department. And he was like, Pam, it's okay. You don't have to do math.
Right. Just because you're good at it.
But basically I was good at it, and I'd gotten a whole lot of positive reinforcement for being so good at it, and defined myself as this is what I am and this is what I can do. Which can be just as much of a limitation, because then it's like I'm only letting my see the mathematical piece of the pie of what I can create. And it was really huge for me to go outside of that and say, oh, there's other things I'm interested in and I want to do, and I don't have to limit myself to just that.
Well, that makes me think of a client that I had when I was back in Texas. And this is absolutely gorgeous, drop-dead, amazing, beautiful woman. She was also very smart and very talented in a number of different ways. She loved working with animals. She actually had a culinary degree. But she was so reinforced for being beautiful that was the only thing that she could really focus on. Yeah. And she was having her own issues with various types of addiction, and that I don't understand why I'm doing this. Even she was getting the validation, but she had taken this whole history of experience of being the beautiful one, the knock out, drop dead, gorgeous woman. Yeah. And she didn't really know how to move beyond it.
Yeah.
And that was a whole lot of what our work was about. What if you actually looked at what would you actually like to do besides be beautiful? And then she was OCD about it.
Yeah.
Every little piece of hair, every piece of jewelry. Anyway, we're about to go to break, but we will come back discussing more about how maybe it's better to just lose your past.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go.
Yeah! Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Evolution is where sexuality and spirituality meets. Join me, clinical sexologist Martha Tara Lee, on Eros Evolution on Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Marilyn Bradford with the Irreverent Therapists, joined by Pam Hodeling, and we're talking about Is Your History Making You Hysterical? Which is just a whole lot about, are you creating yourself? Have you limited yourself? Who you can be? What's possible for you from what you've created in the past?
Yeah. Well, and right before we came to the break, we were kind of looking at the polarity of, you know, whether you've judged things as good or judged things as bad, all that stuff from your past, if you're letting it affect you, if you're letting it influence you, you know, then you're stuck with creating from that.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, so now let's talk about, like, so what is it to actually not create from your past?
Well, I'd like to talk about a couple of tools that I use all the time. And one is every morning I destroy and create my relationship to my past and everything I've been unwilling or unable to let go of. And I use the access clearing statement, right, wrong, good, bad, part only insurance, boys and beyonds. And that way, in a sense, I can reinvent myself every morning.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, and I wanted to talk about access bars, which is one of the body processes that access facilitators teach and do sessions with and stuff. And it's like, you know, we were talking earlier about, you know, in traditional therapy, and you have to like go over, understand what, you know, why is it that I keep creating the same relationship with different people? And with the bars, you just run this process, and it's like you're taking out all the garbage, and you don't have to look through it. You don't have to know what's in it. You don't have to pick out each piece of garbage and remember where you got it from and how long you've had it and what it's meant to you.
This is a very important.
Take out the garbage.
Take out the trash, and then don't go out to the curb and bring it back in.
Right. And so I find when I get my bars run regularly, it's, you know, which means I'm receiving that process regularly. It's just so much of all this stuff about what's significant or important or how I interpret things, that all goes away. Okay. And I'm able to just be present in the moment and, well, what do I choose? What am I aware of here? What questions can I ask that would change this and go forward that way?
You know, one of the things that this whole discussion has brought up for me, at one point I was talking to Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, about, it was obviously something, I can't remember exactly where is making my past relevant. He said, you need to watch 50 First Dates over and over again. So I bought the movie, and if you're not familiar with it, it's about a woman who's in an accident, and she has short-term amnesia. She can remember the past, but and then of course there's the protagonist, the guy who's trying to date her, and they have this wonderful time. You know, they'll meet, they'll have this great date, and then the next day he'll come in and say hi, and she's like, "Why are you bothering me? Who are you?" And it's actually a really good movie to watch if you want to get a sense of what if your past was not even relevant.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's funny, Marilyn, is I'd seen that movie before, and I just watched it again recently because you were talking about it. And the first time I watched it, I was kind of like going from the perspective of the guy, like, you know, how do you get this girl to remember you? Or you know, how do you create a relationship with someone who has no memory? The second time when I was watching it from her perspective because I know, you know, we talk about living in 10-second increments. Yes. And, you know, when you're not referencing the past all the time, you're living in 10-second increments. And that's what she was. She was living it. It's, you know, what is now? Who is this? And who am I? And what would I like to create? It's not tied to everything I have been before.
Exactly. And I mean, this can show up in so many different ways. This past weekend was part of the Albuquerque Balloon Festival, which is truly, I didn't even realize this. I mean, people come from all over the world. When we were at the Glow on Friday night, which is where like there are all these wild shapes, like a chicken and Darth Vader and a fire hydrant
and these are balloons.
These are balloons. These are hot air, and they're going up around you. It's like, as my friend Susie said, she said, you can't be in a bad mood here. You just can't. It's too much fun. There's a bright pink pig, and then you look over here and there's something else. And in other words, it was totally amazing. And the next day we actually went on a balloon ride. We weren't with a mass ascension. We were on a private thing. And there were all of these kinds of things like, I called it our Charlie Brown experience. We had the company that was like, okay, we were the last balloon launched and all this stuff. And it was just, but the point was, we could have hung on to that. And fortunately, nobody in the balloon basket, there were 9 of us, did. Yeah. Because that could have been, well, I can't believe it. We paid the same amount of money and blah, 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 blah. We could have held on to the past. But the magic of being in a balloon, floating, everybody was just like thrilled. And it was basically the same thing. And it really had me look at all the times when I've held on to something that was actually preventing me from being present and being joyful and happy in the present.
Yeah.
And it was just a great example, and we had a wonderful time, and then we all went out for lunch afterwards, and it was just great.
Well, and I just want to highlight, because, I think this is a great story, because if you or the people around you, had been going into this, oh, this is terrible, I can't believe, blah, 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 it's like you would have been creating your present moment as trauma, drama, soap opera, however you want to
Absolutely.
Right? And then you could have projected that into the future. Oh, if I'm never going to do this again, this was such a waste of money, is blah, 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 blah. And it's like, by being willing to not go into that space and to be present and enjoying yourselves, it's like then you're creating your present and your future in a totally different way.
Absolutely. And it was interesting because they're supposed to offer you champagne afterwards.
Yes, it's tradition.
It's tradition. And we had this lovely woman from Denmark with us. And we were coming back to the car because the dog was in the car and this and that. And my friend said, well, do you want to go get champagne? I'm like, no, I don't think so. And our friend from Denmark came and she said, well, I tried to get champagne, but he was pouring so slowly. This guy could not do anything except slowly. And we just started laughing, And then we went out to brunch and we actually got a bottle of wine. And, we had our own celebration, but we didn't make what he was doing significant. And we didn't make ourselves the effect of it.
Yeah.
And that created a really different space. It was truly an absolutely memorable weekend. Just so much fun. Just so much fun. And realizing that a lot of that was choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that, to me, that gets back to what you said earlier about it really is all about a choice. It's like you have the choice of how you interpret things. You have the choice of how you respond to things, and whether, to me, choosing to be the effect of something is a choice.
Yes.
It's like, if you guys felt like, well, we're at the mercy of these balloon people and our day is going to be ruined based on how they do their job, you're the effect of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're like, hey, I'm enjoying myself, I'm creating the day the way I would like to create it, you're not the effect of them and, their slowness or whatever.
Well, and it's part of that, this is a little bit off tangent, but not really, is that happiness is a choice.
Yes.
It's not dependent on what's going on. And we all chose to be happy.
Yeah.
And have a great time. And we did. We really had a fun time. So it's just interesting. It was such a good example to me of how much choice I actually do have and how I interpret the events of my life and what I create and what I'd like to create. And
yeah. So we only have a little bit of time left. Any last Do either of us have any last words?
Well, I would just say, destroying and create your relationship to your past every day. Ask yourself, okay, if I were born today, but, in your full adult body, what would I choose? What would be fun for me? What would I like to do? What have I not allowed myself to do because I've decided I can't do it, or I'm not good at it, or it won't work out, or, and just destroy and create all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything from you, Pam? Anything?
Just the no judgment.
The no judgment.
Yeah. So destroy and uncreate your past, like Marilyn said. And every time you're going into judgment, if I wasn't judging, what would I be aware of?
Yeah.
If I wasn't going into judgment, what would I be choosing? And use the clearing statement.
And use the clearing
And
statement.
get your bars run.
And get your bars run. Awesome. So next week, Pam and I are both going to be in Costa Rica. Yay! Doing a 7-day with Access Consciousness. So we're going to have a repeat show, but it was a really good one, which was, have you alienated your body? Most of us are taught that our bodies are basically unconscious, almost mechanical structures that we sometimes can't depend on. We are taught to deal with our bodies by following what the experts have decided will bring health and happiness. What if none of that is true? What if your body is actually conscious and has a lot to tell you? Are you ready to listen? So we would welcome even though we won't be able to be live, we will welcome your emails. And the week after that, we're doing Cracking the Myth of the Solid Self. And thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely week. And we are the Irreverent Therapists.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.